The war that changed everything, Putin's folly and Trump's peace. The air in Moscow on the morning of February 24, 2022, was heavy with tension. President Vladimir Putin, clad in his signature dark suit, addressed the nation with cold resolve. He announced the beginning of what he called a special military operation in Ukraine. For Putin, this was supposed to be a swift and decisive campaign. Russian forces would capture Kyiv in days, install a puppet regime, and demonstrate the might of the Russian Federation to the world. However, what unfolded was far from what he had envisioned. The Russian military, though formidable on paper, stumbled from the outset. Ukrainian forces, bolstered by Western intelligence and weaponry, mounted a fierce resistance. Civilians armed themselves, tech-savvy hackers disrupted Russian communications, and President Volodymyr Zelensky's defiant speeches galvanized global support. As the days turned to weeks, the quick victory Putin had promised his generals turned into a grinding war of attrition. The streets of Kyiv and Kharkiv became battlefields, but the Russian advances stalled. Supply lines faltered, morale among Russian troops plummeted, and Ukraine's unyielding defense earned admiration worldwide. By the war's second year, the toll on Russia was staggering. Over 700,000 soldiers were reported dead, wounded, or missing. These were not mere statistics, but fathers, sons, and brothers whose absence left a void in communities across Russia. Desperate to replenish his forces, Putin instituted conscription on a scale not seen since World War II, sparking widespread protests and an exodus of young men fleeing the country. The economic fallout was equally devastating. Western sanctions, imposed with unprecedented unity, targeted Russia's financial institutions, energy exports, and key industries. Major companies withdrew, leaving empty storefronts and unemployed workers in their wake. The ruble collapsed, inflation soared, and basic goods became luxuries for ordinary Russians. Moscow's once vibrant streets were eerily quiet, a stark symbol of the country's decline. Internationally, Russia found itself isolated. Former allies distanced themselves, unwilling to risk their own economic stability by associating with a pariah state. Only China and North Korea remained as tenuous partners. China exploited Russia's desperation, securing energy deals at bargain prices and turning the once proud nation into a junior partner. North Korea, ever opportunistic, provided rudimentary military supplies in exchange for food aid and diplomatic support. As the war dragged on, whispers of dissent grew louder within Russia's elite. Oligarchs saw their fortunes evaporate, and military leaders grew wary of Putin's increasingly erratic decisions. Yet, fear of reprisal kept most critics silent. Putin's grip on power, while weakened, remained firm, for now. By 2024, the world was desperate for an end to the conflict. The war had claimed hundreds of thousands of lives, displaced millions, and disrupted global markets. Enter Donald Trump. Having narrowly regained the US presidency, Trump saw an opportunity to cement his legacy as a deal-maker. Despite his polarizing reputation, he possessed an undeniable knack for grabbing attention. Trump's proposal to broker peace between Russia and Ukraine was met with skepticism, yet his brash confidence and ability to dominate headlines forced both sides to the negotiating table. In a series of high-profile summits held in Geneva, Trump played mediator. With cameras capturing every handshake and soundbite, he reveled in the spotlight. While his methods were unconventional and often criticized as self-aggrandizing, they proved effective in breaking the deadlock. The resulting treaty demanded Russia's complete withdrawal from Ukrainian territory, recognition of Ukraine's sovereignty, and reparations for the destruction caused. In return, sanctions would be gradually lifted, and certain humanitarian corridors would be established to aid war-torn regions. For Ukraine, it was a bittersweet victory. They had preserved their nation, but at a tremendous cost. For Russia, the treaty marked the end of the war, but the beginning of a new nightmare. The war had left Russia economically shattered and diplomatically isolated. Even with the peace treaty, most Western nations were reluctant to re-establish ties. Years of propaganda and aggression had tarnished Russia's reputation, making it a pariah on the global stage. China and North Korea remained Russia's only significant partners. However, their relationships were far from equal. Russia's economy, now heavily dependent on these two nations, struggled to recover. Domestically, the mood was grim. Ordinary Russians bore the brunt of the war's consequences. Veterans returned home to find few opportunities, their sacrifices overshadowed by the country's broader struggles. Public trust in government institutions eroded, and whispers of rebellion grew louder. The war's end also reshaped the global balance of power. Ukraine, bolstered by its resilience and Western support, became a symbol of democratic defiance. NATO expanded further, reinforcing its commitment to collective security. For Trump, the peace treaty was a political triumph. Though criticized for his methods, he succeeded where others had failed. Yet his legacy was complicated by the long-term implications of the treaty. The Ukraine war was a tragedy of historic proportions. It began with Putin's hubris, a misguided attempt to restore Russia's imperial glory. It ended with a broken nation, a shattered economy, and a tarnished legacy for its leader. For Russia, the war was a stark lesson in the dangers of unchecked ambition and isolationism. For the world, it was a reminder of the fragility of peace and the importance of vigilance in the face of aggression. As the dust settled, one truth remained clear: the war had changed everything.